If you find yourself staring into the fridge at 3 p.m., even though you just had lunch, you're not hungry, you're bored. And honestly, you're not alone. We've all been there. That moment when you open the cupboard for the third time in 10 minutes like something new is going to magically appear. Spoiler alert, it's still the same cereal and half-empty jar of peanut butter. But here's the thing. Boredom eating isn't about food. It's about what food does for your brain when life feels empty, unstimulating, or, frankly, just dull. Let's be real. You're not reaching for carrot sticks when you're bored. You're going for chips, cookies, something crunchy, sweet, or satisfyingly terrible for you. And there's a reason for that. Your brain is literally looking for stimulation, and food, especially the good stuff, delivers it fast. When you're bored, your dopamine levels drop. That's the neurotransmitter responsible for motivation, pleasure, and making you feel like life has a point. Eating, particularly foods high in sugar, fat, or salt, gives you a quick dopamine hit. It's like your brain's emergency backup generator kicking in when the power goes out. But here's where it gets interesting. Boredom eating isn't just one thing. It's actually a behavior that shows up differently depending on the type of person you are. And once you understand your type, you'll start to see why you do it, and maybe even how to stop sabotaging yourself every time Netflix asks if you're still watching. Type 1. The stimulation seeker. These are the people who eat when they're bored because their environment is understimulating. Their brain is literally starving for input, and food becomes the easiest, most accessible source of sensory pleasure. Think about it. Eating engages taste, texture, smell, and even sound if you're going for something crunchy. It's a full sensory experience that requires zero effort. You don't need to get dressed, leave the house, or come up with a plan. You just open the fridge and suddenly your brain has something to do. Research shows that people who score high on sensation-seeking traits are more likely to engage in boredom eating. They're wired to crave novelty and excitement, and when life feels flat, food fills the gap. The problem is, the satisfaction is temporary. 5 minutes after finishing that bag of chips, you're back to being bored. Except now you're also annoyed at yourself. It's a lose-lose situation, but your brain doesn't care. It got its dopamine hit, and that's all that matters in the moment. Type 2. The emotional avoider. This type doesn't eat because they're understimulated. They eat because they're trying to distract themselves from uncomfortable feelings. Boredom isn't just the absence of activity, it's also the presence of restlessness, frustration, or even low-level anxiety. And for some people, those feelings are unbearable. So instead of sitting with the discomfort, they eat. Food becomes a numbing agent, a way to interrupt the mental noise and replace it with something more pleasant, even if it's just for a few minutes. Psychologists call this emotional eating, and boredom is one of its biggest triggers. The tricky part is that boredom eating often doesn't feel emotional. It feels casual, mindless, almost automatic. You're not crying into a tub of ice cream. You're just grazing while scrolling through your phone. But underneath that surface-level behavior is the same mechanism, using food to regulate your emotional state. The problem is, it doesn't actually work. You can't eat your way out of boredom any more than you can scroll your way out of loneliness. But your brain keeps trying because the alternative, actually dealing with the feeling, is harder. Type 3. The habit follower. This type eats when they're bored because it's simply what they've always done. It's not about dopamine. It's not about emotions. It's about routine. Maybe you grew up in a household where snacking was just part of the daily rhythm. Maybe you developed the habit during a stressful period in your life, and now it's just stuck. Either way, boredom eating has become a default response, a learned behavior that your brain executes without conscious thought. The science here is all about conditioning. If you've repeatedly paired boredom with eating, your brain starts to associate the two. Bored equals snack time. It's the same principle behind Pavlov's dogs, except instead of drooling at a bell, you're reaching for chips every time you have nothing to do. The good news is that habits can be unlearned. The bad news is that it takes time, effort, and a lot of intentional interruption of the pattern. You have to catch yourself in the act and actively choose a different response. Easier said than done, especially when the bag of Doritos is right there. Now here's the deeper question. Why does boredom feel so unbearable that we'll literally eat our way through it? Because modern life has conditioned us to expect constant stimulation. We're so used to scrolling, swiping, streaming, and clicking that the second we're left alone with our thoughts, it feels wrong. Boredom isn't a lack of things to do, it's the discomfort of having to be present with yourself without a distraction. And eating is one of the oldest, most primal distractions we have. But here's what people who've cracked the code understand. Boredom isn't the enemy. It's a signal. It's your brain telling you something needs to change. Maybe you need more stimulation in your life. Maybe you need to process some emotions you've been avoiding. Maybe you need to break a habit that's no longer serving you. The point is, boredom is information. And when you ignore that information by eating, you're just kicking the problem down the road. So what's the alternative? First, recognize the type you are. Are you a stimulation seeker who needs more novelty in your day? Find something engaging that isn't food. Learn something new, move your body, call a friend, do literally anything that gives your brain the input it's craving. Are you an emotional avoider, using food to escape uncomfortable feelings? Sit with the boredom for 5 minutes. Just 5. See what happens. You might be surprised to find that the discomfort passes and you didn't need the snack after all. Are you a habit follower stuck in a loop? Interrupt the pattern. Replace the behavior with something else. Drink water. Go for a walk. Do 10 push-ups. It doesn't have to be life-changing. It just has to be different. The truth is, people who eat when they're bored aren't weak or undisciplined. They're human. They're responding to a real psychological need with the tools they have available. The problem isn't the eating. It's the lack of awareness around why it's happening. Once you understand the why, you can start to make different choices. Not perfect choices, not Instagram-worthy choices. Just choices that actually serve you instead of leaving you at the bottom of an empty bag wondering how you got there. So here's my challenge for you. Next time you're bored and heading for the kitchen, pause. Ask yourself, am I actually hungry or am I just looking for something to do? And if the answer is the latter, try something else, anything else. See what happens. You might surprise yourself. If this resonated with you, do me a favor. Hit that like button, share this with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe if you haven't already. Up next, we're diving into the psychology of people who don't share their feelings. You know the type. They're fine until they're not, and by the time they finally open up, it's usually a crisis. It's going to be a good one. I'll see you there.